What's up, party people? Welcome to another episode of Shabuvi. For those of you who have been here before, thank you so much for making the go round and coming back. For those of you who've never been here before, welcome. And to give you a little breakdown of what we do here in Shabuvi, I take a show, a book, and a movie, hence the super cool name and logo. Shout out my sister Deanna for making the logo. She also made the website, if you guys haven't been on there. Tons of show, book, and movie reviews and power rankings and past Shabuvi episodes, so definitely check it out if you haven't been there yet. But so basically, what I do is I take one of each of those bits of media and I combine them all together with a unifying theme. So, for example, if we take the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes show, we take the famous Sir Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes novels, novellas, and short stories, and the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies, then we can conclude with a unifying thematic theme that Sherlock Holmes is a pretty smart guy. So that's just a pretty lazy example of what we do here in Shibuvi. Something else that you might have noticed already, as I sporadically pick dog hair off my lip, is that we don't do any editing here in Shibuvi. I don't believe in it. I don't want to learn how to do it. It seems really difficult. So we do like a real time streaming kind of thing here with Shibuvi. So I might like spit on myself. I might stutter. I might lose my train of thought. But it's fun. It's like you're experiencing my train of thought with me. It's good. You'll like it. I promise. But anyway, this week's episode, I always say this week, and it's monthly. I can't do this shit every week, guys. Jeez. Anyway, this month's episode is centered on war. I know it's not the most flattering or, most joyous topic that we could discuss, but whether it's shows, books, or movies, war is just abundant in really, really rich thematic material. Some of our greatest bits of media across all three come from war stories, and so it felt like something that I needed to do after almost 20 episodes here at Shibuvi, and especially given the Odyssey, which just came out and which turned into a bit of an anti-war movie. I was tempted to put that in here instead of the movie I selected, but I restrained myself. But anyway, so what we're going to talk about in regards to war is the surrealism of war. How war, despite how very real it is, seems very much surreal, and some of the decisions that people have to make, some of the procedures and actions that people take in war seem so outlandish, yet they are real. And so we're going to explore that through the surrealism presented in Battlestar Galactica for a show, Catch 22 for our novel choice, and arguably the greatest war movie of all time, Apocalypse Now, for our film choice. So let's go ahead and get started. So probably, when I use the word surreal, I know you guys probably think of like Salvador Dali or like, David Lynch movies or something like that. So with Battlestar Galactica, surrealism is like kind of a looser term here. Obviously, the very premise of the show, kind of defies reality. It's about a group of the stragglers of the human race in a ship called the Battlestar Galactica, uh, evading invasion and just general elimination of the entire species by a group of sentient machines called the Cylons. It's a remake of an old show from the 70s. From I've never seen the original show. From what I heard, it's not super good. But this new edition, quote unquote new, came out in 2004, I believe, and it is awesome. Generally held as one of the best shows of the 2000s. I'm definitely inclined to agree. It is pretty awesome stuff. But they tackle, despite the high sci-fi premise, it's almost one of those stories that is like science fiction second, and the sci-fi takes a backseat to like all sorts of like political and war allegory. And so the surrealism aspect of war that is assessed in Battlestar Galactica is more of the like morality of the situations, the impossible decisions and actions that people are forced to take in this war with the Cylons, who, of course, look like humans. So obviously, they're homing in on war in general amongst humanity. And so you see these characters who, maybe start to show off very pure of heart and, really wanting to maintain their innocence and heroism, really having to make some really appalling calls. And the show assesses things like torture, like suicide bombings, like how many civilians do you sacrifice to save more civilians, a trolley problem kind of dilemma or things like that. So these like really, really difficult sort of soupy morality kind of decisions that a lot of the characters in the show have to handle. But don't take it from me, take it from one of the characters himself. This is Colonel Saul Tai, one of the good guys. And this is during a stint in the show where they're basically in like a sort of internment camp sort of battle with the Cylons. And he has his people going and committing suicide bombings. And he's being confronted by another one of the characters about the morality of suicide bombings. And I think this kind of puts that, sort of surreal, impossible decision making into perspective in regards to the show. So let's kick back and check this out.
I don't care that it's effective. I don't care that the Cylons can't stop it. It's wrong. No more suicide bombings, Colonel. You understand?
What, are you working for the Cylons now?
I'm sorry, Lance. No, excuse me.
You see, little things like that, they don't matter anymore. In fact, not too frackin' much really matters anymore. I got one job here, lady, and one job only. To disrupt the Cylons. Make them worry about the anthill they've stirred up down here so they're distracted and out of position when the old man shows up in orbit. The bombings? They got the Cylons' attention. They really got their attention, and I am not giving that up.
We're talking about people blowing themselves up.
You know, sometimes I think that you've got ice water in those veins, and other times I think you're just a naive little school teacher. I've sent men on suicide missions in 2 wars now, and let me tell you something. It don't make a goddamn bit of difference whether they're riding in a Viper or walking out onto a parade ground. In the end, they're just as dead. So take your piety and your moralizing and your high-minded principles and stick them someplace safe until you're off this rock and you're sitting in your nice cushy chair on Colonial 1 again. I've got a war to fight.
Ooh, what a killer scene. But you can see, he addresses firsthand some of those issues that people want to maintain in a war, like piety, morality, high-mindedness, that unfortunately war just brings out such a horrifying level of surrealist problem solving that you're just unable to keep to those principles. When your back's against the wall in a conflict like this, what's right, what's wrong? And that's the kind of issues that Battlestar Galactica faces head on, as you can see in this scene. Killer show, check it out. Won't have any more spoilers here, but it is amazing and has questions like this all the time. Next, we're going to pivot over to maybe the most surreal example of handling war, which is the novel Catch-22, which is, while it's a war novel and a devastating war novel and very, very sad, it is also hilarious, which sounds horrible of me to say, but it is one of the funniest books ever written and one of the best books ever written in general. And that's just not me. That is an objective opinion. In fact, Joseph Heller was asked once, how do you feel never having written a book as good as Catch-22 ever again in your career? And his answer was, who has? And he's kind of right, an arrogant answer, but he's totally right. It is an all-time classic book. And of course, it devised the phrase Catch-22, which people use all the time, whether they even know where it's from or not. And what Catch-22 is, let me scoot myself in the middle here, or I can't do the middle. Anyway, so the titular Catch-22 in this insane, comedic, cartoonish world that is war in Catch-22 is basically this. If you're a soldier who wants to get out of combat duty, which the main character of Catch-22 does, his name is Yossarian, you are assessed as, if you say yes, yes, I'd like to be out of combat duty because I'm an insane person. Only the insane people can get out of war. So by asking to be removed from war, you're proving you're sane. So you still have to continue to fight. But if you say you're insane, you see how dizzying this is? I can barely explain it. Better to just follow the flowchart. So if you ask an airman that's in the middle of war, do you want to get out of combat duty? They say yes. And they say, okay, you can only get out of combat duty if you're insane. And wanting to get out of combat duty is proof of your sanity. So you have to keep fighting. So the only other thing you can say is, do you want to get out of combat duty? No, in which case you have to keep fighting. So the main character is continuously trying to prove himself to be insane, but he keeps getting stuck on this catch 22 because he's like acknowledging his insanity by but also acknowledging his sanity by not wanting to fight. It is a clusterfuck. And it's intentional. And a lot of the book is like this. Like Heller writes the book like totally non-linear. The book is like very confusing. You really have to sit down and really you map out the whole plot overall, because it's intentionally scatterbrained because he is trying to Heller's trying to address how much of a like mental frenzy it is to be in a war. And yes, it's comic. Yes, you have some batshit characters like Yossarian, like a character named literally named Major, or another character named Lieutenant Shipscop, which means Lieutenant Shithead, or another character named Milo Minderbinder, who is in love with the idea of all the economy and capitalism that war can bring. You have all of these caricature characters, and they're all in these goofy, zany situations, and they're all occurring out of linear timelines. But ultimately, what Heller's trying to say in all of this goofiness is war is at its root an insane enterprise. And so it's that surreal aspect of war, the very insane logic of it existing, that Heller is trying to reach in Catch 22. If I fail to describe it accurately, like I said, it's kind of a twisty kind of book, but I promise you it's way more entertaining than I made it out to be. It is not by any means a chore to read. But like I said, it does get pretty bleak because as goofy as it is, Heller doesn't shy away when things get a little dark. But anyway, one of the greatest war books and books ever, and it's definitely shows a very surrealistic approach to how war even exists. And finally, we're going to get into the mother of all war movies, Apocalypse Now, written and directed by Francis Ford Coppola in maybe the best movie streak ever. He made The Godfather, Godfather Part 2, The Conversation, and Apocalypse Now. They're all seen as four of the best movies ever made. He made them all within 7 years of each other. It's preposterous. And Apocalypse Now, like, you could argue is like maybe the best of all of them. It's one of the greatest movies ever, and one of the best directed movies ever. Francis Coppola almost died making this movie. Several people almost died making this movie. Martin Sheen had a heart attack making this movie. Several people did die. A man was decapitated because a helicopter crashed. It is a batshit. The story of the making of Apocalypse Now is a batshit story in itself. But the movie itself is also batshit because it handles the horrors of war. And we see this by visiting this sort of pretty broad array of characters. And the movie is an adaptation of the movie, Jesus Christ. The movie is an adaptation of the book, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. And he takes it from Africa into Vietnam. And it has an awesome cast, just a total who's who of like acting legends: Robert Duvall, Lawrence Fishburne, Dennis Hopper, Marlon Brando, Martin Sheen. And all of these characters show the like totally callous horror. It's difficult to use a different word when talking about Apocalypse Now and its approach to war, because Francis Ford Coppola approaches war and approaches the film as a horror film. It is like a surreal horror experience, because he is just trying to show how truly morally abysmal and just grotesque war is in its very nature. And he's not trying to, there's no gun ho glorifying war or anything like that. Yeah, the closest we get to that is Robert Duvall's character, and he's just an ass. So we're making fun of him in the movie. He's a monster. But perhaps the best way to encapsulate the way that surreal horror is applied to war is to just let Marlon Brando's insane Colonel Kurtz tell you himself. A bit of a long clip here, but bear with me. This shit is trippy as hell and summarizes my whole thing in a nutshell.
Horror has a face, and you must make a friend of horror. Horror and moral terror are your friends. If they are not, then they are enemies to be feared. They are truly enemies. I remember when I was with Special Forces, seems
Warning, by the way, this is a little graphic what we're about to hear here, but carrying on.
1,000 centuries ago. We went into a camp to inoculate some children. We left the camp after we had inoculated the children for polio. And this old man came running after us, and he was crying. He couldn't say. We went back there, and they had come and hacked off every inoculated arm. There they were in a pile of little arms. And I remember I cried, I wept like some grandmother. I wanted to tear my teeth out. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I want to remember it. I never want to forget it. I never want to forget. And then I realized, like I was shot with a diamond bullet right through my forehead. And I thought, my God, the genius of that, the genius, the will to do that. Perfect, genuine, complete, crystalline, pure. And then I realized they were stronger than me because they could stand it. These were not monsters. These were men, trained cadres. These men who fought with their hearts, who have families, who have children, who are filled with love. But they have the strength to do that. If I had 10 divisions of those men, then our troubles here would be over very quickly. You have to have men who are moral and at the same time who are able to utilize their primordial instincts to kill without feeling, without passion, without judgment. Because it's judgment that defeats us.
Pretty bleak. I know that wasn't the most uplifting clip ever, but like I said, Francis Ford Coppola was trying to make this a horror film, and Jesus, that's doesn't get much more horrifying than that. Someone like Colonel Kurtz, played by Brando here, who is glorifying an act that is just unspeakable. And while his character is portrayed as insane, his whole point here is that in war, acts like that are like necessary, encouraged, seen as, willpower breaking genius moves to win a war. And if that is not surreally horrifying, I don't know what is. So, anyway, that is our lovely, fluffy episode this month of Shabuvi. If this is your first time tuning in, I promise they are not all as grim as this is. We definitely go through some lighter stuff, but I hope you still got something out of it. I hope you feel a little bit more, thematically appeased than you did when you first came in. But regardless, thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys. Give me a follow. Go check out the website, subscribe, do all that shit. check out some reviews, check out last few episodes. Give me some recs if you think of something that I could do on my next episode. I have a few ideas, but nothing too concrete. But appreciate you guys. As always, go read some books, go watch some shows, go watch some movies. See ya.